Okay, side control concepts. You want to flatten your back for me? Do a little demonstration first. This way. Middle. Yeah, perfect. Move a little bit. Okay, let's break it down a little bit. Side control for a lot of guys is even more favorable than the mount in terms of control of your opponent and submission hold opportunities. Of course, although there's some strikes that you can do from side control, probably not as devastating as far as the amount of impact for each blow that you can get from the mount due to the distance factor. But against a larger, heavier, stronger person, it can be very useful to tire them down and maneuver yourself into a better position, ultimately finishing the match. So let's talk about like some of the theories that are going on with this position, some of the principles that are being applied. If you lay down flat on your back, please, and let's turn like this. There we go. So we're going to divide his chest. Just relax here. We're going to divide his chest into two sections. If I draw a line right down the center of his chest, from here to his hip, we'll call the low position. All right? And from here to his neck, we'll call the high position. So, when I'm controlling in the low position, my body weight is going to be centered from anywhere from here to here. And the control point on his body that I'm ultimately trying to control is the point between his hip and knee. Okay? I can also use some other control points to enhance that, but that's fundamentally what's keeping him controlled. When he starts to move, it switches from a static position to more of a dynamic position. In other words, he's moving and I have to be able to maintain these contact points in motion. So therefore what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using circular movements towards his legs, this direction, in order to maintain the position. Okay? So roll towards the wall one time. Just one roll. Thank you. All the way? Yes. Okay, so let's look a little bit about it. I'm going to show from a couple different angles. But my body will be in three different basic positions. The Keisagatame position, which is here. My knees spread extremely wide. Knee under the armpit. Foot stretched back. And notice here my back, my low back and bottom are controlling that point between the hip and butt. And my forearm is squeezing here. Can we turn our head towards the camera? This way. Okay? So here we go. This is the low position. So this is very good to stop two forces from him. If he's trying to lift up with his hips, my body is kind of driving backwards against his hips also. So he doesn't get the same effect of bumping me forward. Okay? It's also good if he tries to turn to his side this way. I lift his elbow and I kind of move in a circle towards his legs. And this is flattening him. Okay? Let's come back again. If he were to get his elbow in, it's a little bit harder for me to turn him, especially as he starts getting to his side. So what I'll do is I'll keep this foot planted, and this leg will sweep behind him so that I end up at a 45-degree angle, my head kind of close to his head, and my knee is completely underneath his legs. Look here. This knee is completely underneath his legs. I'm not 90 degrees to him like this. My knee is completely underneath the legs, and my forearm is clamping down on his torso here. This way. My close arm, I like to go underneath, somewhere between his elbow and armpit on this side, as I keep my head down. Okay? So let's turn. So we've got a lot of stuff going on here in terms of control points on the body. Okay? This leg, knee can be down, posted, up, kind of a preference thing for you, and depending on how you feel like you get the most pressure. But if you notice, chest weight is here on the low part, and I'm controlling this portion of his body, okay? And the final way we'll do it, sometimes he gets this leg flat on the ground, so therefore my knee is not able to get underneath him, okay? So what I want to do in this case is I want to completely turn towards his legs, okay? This way, my head's looking away from him, and my hand is also on the ground here, preventing him from sliding underneath my body. So let's turn head towards the wall. I was trying to control the knee, but he gets his leg flat on the ground. You see how my knee is no longer effectively controlling that territory? Switch, head close to his leg down on the ground, and sit through. So now my knee is controlling that space once again. My hand is also assisting, and my head is always touching the top of his thigh for two things. One, I don't want to get kicked in the face. And number two, I don't want him grabbing my neck. If I'm up here with my neck, it's easy for him to latch onto me and create a problem. So simply by looking away from him and keeping my head down, keeps me a little safer. Go ahead and try to grab the neck. It's very difficult. If he starts to turn to his side, I use the circular movement, moving in a circle towards his legs to flatten him. And back again. If he tries to sit up, I lift his legs and put him flat. Okay? Now, the other hand position I can use from here is cupping like a monkey grip. One arm's controlling both legs. And here I'm looking to clear his legs out of the way and maybe kick over. Okay? So this is going to be the low position. When we talk in terms of high position, can you turn on your side again? Sorry to move you around so much. When we talk about high position, remember we divided his chest into two sectors, right? Chest to hip, and the high position will be from chest to neck, all right? And before, we talked about, for the low contact, hip to knee as being the control point. For high, I'm trying to get somewhere between his armpit and elbow. And my circular movement, instead of being towards his legs, will be towards his head. Okay? So, let's take a quick look. Your hip positions, your body positions are going to be very similar. Keisagatame, chest down, reverse Keisagatame. Okay? So, this fashion, okay, is our first position, leg spread real wide. If you notice here, my knee spread out wide, pointing this way. It prevents him from bridging this way, much like it did before when I was low. And it prevents him from turning on his side. I use this elbow control also to enhance the movement. So as he tries to turn sideways, I lift up on the elbow and I walk in a circle towards his head. This is the dynamic control that we're talking about. The sensation he'll get is he's going to get on his side a little bit and then he's going to be forced right back to where he came from, thereby tiring him out. Okay? So let's move a little bit in this position. Go ahead. He'll be trying to chase the legs and get you back in the guard. Okay, keep moving. So you notice he gets a little tired here. Okay? I'm going to lift the elbow and move to the second position. Before I was controlling his leg, hip to knee. Now I'm going to use my opposite leg to go underneath his armpit. So previously I rotated backwards. Now I'm going to rotate forward. So this leg doesn't move, this one moves. Watch, I lift, bam, knee under the armpit. Now as I turn over, I want to go on the opposite side of his head and squeeze this way. The whole point here is try to get your right elbow on the floor. It should be challenging to do so. Okay? The other variation that I can use, if I'm having a hard time controlling this elbow, is the cross-face grip. Which, what I want is to get underneath the far shoulder. I put my shoulder in his jaw and simply make a muscle to cause his head to turn to the side. So in this position, it forces his head to turn, and it's very, very uncomfortable for him to turn into you, to the right side. Try to turn here very, very hard. Okay? You can combine both of these controls by, see how his elbow is in a little bit right here? Watch what I do. While I keep the cross face going, I touch my knee together and I scoop my knee up his body. Keep your elbow in a little bit, please. I scoop my knee underneath, and now I've got the best of both worlds. I've got the elbow control and I've got the cross face pressure. So here you get excellent control from the top. One last variation here will be the reverse Keisagatame, but high. So before we looked where I was controlling his legs, now I'm going to get more on his upper body. So completely going the extreme in the other direction. So what I'm doing is digging underneath this arm here, sliding it up, And now I turn on my side and I scoop my body so that my ribs here are right here on his neck. I want to be not really under his armpit, but close to the point of the elbow, right here at the beginning of his tricep muscle. And now I engage my lat by squeezing here, and it puts a lot of pressure on his head, and more importantly on his arm. It makes his arm hard to recover and get back to position. Can you turn your side a little bit? This way? Actually, just, yeah, here we go. Good. Now, the added benefit of this position is that it really enables you to use your legs freely to go to the mount position. For example, if he's keeping his legs up, trying to coil up and defend me from mounting, it's very easy just to pull his legs towards me and kick over. Bingo. Alright? So before, when I was lower on him, my legs would have the tendency to get tangled up inside of his legs, making it more difficult for me. Here, I'm very high. Okay? So also, when I kick over, notice how high I'm going to land on his body. It's going to be a high mount, a very aggressive mount. Submission holds are going to be easier to start hunting for. Look at his arm right here. Arm lock for the mount. Okay? Or you could do, another hold if you like. The idea is to stretch his arms out away from his body, making him very weak and vulnerable, and applying my body weight at those control points, which we had previously discussed. Okay? So, let's walk through the variations, and now we're going to talk about a couple of options to improve position. Not only just hold him down, but eventually work to the mount position. Okay, you kind of already saw one. I'm going to incorporate the one from the crossface as well. The mount probably is not going to happen so much when you're in the low control, but the low control is good to just get a hold of him and tire him out a little and eventually work yourself up to a higher attacking position. All right, so for the purposes of the mount, we're going to start here. Okay. Here I go. I'm in the high position, move around a little bit. I'm going to talk through what's going on. I'm moving in a circle as I lift up on the elbow. He's trying to chase my legs and get on the side. Okay, here what I'm doing is moving in a circle to avoid that. Whenever I'm ready, keep moving a little bit. Whenever I'm ready, I'm going to lift, bang, touch my knee to his armpit, and move in for the head control here. Squeeze my knees together. Okay, I'm going to come back and get his neck this way. Now what I do, first just test and see if he can move. You're going to hold him here for a second, try to get your right elbow in. It should be kind of tough. Very tough. Now I'm going to stretch my arm here. Stretch. What I'm doing is controlling that space between armpit and elbow on the far side, and I'm stretching his arm out that direction, over his head. Okay? Now what I do is I'm going to creep my knee high over his waist. I'm going to stretch my arm again, and then I'm going to slap my foot to the floor and get a nice mount position here. Okay? Once again. High. He moves a little bit, moving in a circle. The end of the armpit. Let's say he gets his elbow in here. Anytime I can't get the elbow, I can come and get the neck. Cross face, right? Now, I'm going to use my leg. Watch here. I'm going to use my leg here to sweep inside. And then the same finish. Bring my knee over. In this position, don't keep your elbow close because he's going to bump you over. Arm stretch, head up a little bit. Nice high mount. All right. One last thing I want to look for from here is a basic Kimura attack. So we're going to take our first position, Kickboxing in the low position. You could do it from the high position as well. Okay? But typically what happens here, when I make my adjustment, this arm is very free to work. Okay, it uses as a distraction, work on his arms, or because he feels like his hips are so blocked, it's very possible he might start using his hands to try to push and create space. So one thing you can look for here, once you've established your control, is to isolate this arm away from his body. Okay, so here's what it's going to look like. You're going to go inside the wrist, kick over, and then I'm going to squeeze my knees together here. Now, because I'm going to eventually attack this arm, what I want to do is I don't want to stay low on the hip. I want to get really high on his body now. Okay, so I just use the low position to set up the control of the arm. And now what I want to do is I want to get high on him. As I turn over, and look, I just put my belly, look here, right on top of his head. It's very uncomfortable. Can you slide back a little bit? Belly right on top of his head here. Okay, so I start to work the forearm. This arm at this point, I could keep it trapped, okay, or I could just put a leg over it, or a leg over it. All of those are going to be fine. Let's turn this way. Let's look at this arm. So here we go. I was here, okay? A lot of times the guy's going to be like this. He doesn't want you to get his arm. So what you do is you simply start putting some pressure on his neck with his arm here. And as he comes in to defend it, he falls right in. Control the wrist, monkey hook. So I'm flexing my hand here to prevent him from stretching his arm. Look here, he straightens his arm very easy. Stretch your arm. We're going to do our Americana. Okay. Touch my knee to his body. Drag the arm back and lift. Okay, so we've seen this one before, Americana. Now, what he can also do is when he feels himself start to get threatened here, is he'll straighten his arm. So look, anytime I'm attacking the arm, I need to put my body weight over the joint that I'm going to break. Okay? So when he goes to extend his arm, I'm attacking the elbow. That's where I want to focus my body weight. So if I stay chest to chest in the side control, I'll still hold him down, but I'm going to lose the submission opportunity. So as he stretches, watch, I follow his arm. So now my hip is in his neck, and my chest is right over the joint that's going to get broke. Notice how his palm is facing up right here. Okay? What I did was I moved from a low position here, and as he straightened the arm, my forearm followed and just found that elbow joint. I grabbed my own bicep. This hand cups the wrist. If his palm is up, his elbow will bend and it won't really break the elbow. So what I want to do is I want to roll his arm that way, and as that happens, his thumb will slowly start to point to the ceiling. Watch what happens. Right there. This is the angle that you're going to break the arm. I do so by maintaining downward pressure and lifting up with my elbow. That's a hyperextension. Now, the second thing that's going to happen here is he's going to put his hand flat on the ground because he doesn't want his arm to get broke. Okay, so he temporarily saved himself. What I'm going to do here is change the position of the arm. So look, I'm going to arch my back as I lift. I put this hand on the ground, and I'm going to replace my hand with my head this way. So it's very hard for me to get his hand back. I arch my body here, and I change my grip. Look, this one comes underneath my arm so that I'm controlled by his tricep. As I squeeze my ear and shoulder against his wrist, this hand extracts, and I'm going to start to find his wrist here. Now what I want to do is place my elbow on his belly button and make sure his arm is folded. When you're folding the arm, I recommend a tight angle so the arm is eventually shaped like a letter V, like this, as opposed to being out at a wide angle. I'm not saying this wide angle won't work. I'm saying from my personal experience and preference, I think this one, you get a lot faster reaction and you can get a stronger individual with this grip. Just my opinion and preference. Okay, so that being said, I don't want my elbow here on the ground because you see the straight angle of his arm. But as I bring my elbow back, it's like I'm balancing it right on his belly button here. You see the nice fold of the arm, right? So here, what I'm going to do is slide this arm underneath and grab my own wrist. Now watch what I do with my legs here. Here I'm at a 90-degree angle with his body. As I walk towards his head a little bit, it's going to be easier for me to place this elbow in a direct position underneath his elbow joint, in a straight line with the forearm. And that's going to give me the ideal leverage to break the elbow. So watch here. I walk in an angle, and now I slide my elbow open. Look at this. Now with very minimal pressure, watch. I throw my leg up, and now I'm going to lift here on his elbow, and he's going to tap fast. Right there is all it took. As opposed to keeping my elbow back underneath his shoulder. Keep your elbow down, please. Look how strong and heavy he is here. I have a short lever on his humerus bone. Whereas if I walk, I open my elbow up and make that straight angle. Look, I followed it with my body weight. You see how my chest is centered over that elbow? I throw my leg over. Now very little pressure. Right there is the break of the elbow. Okay? You okay, Matt? Matt's been a very good training partner today. Side control is very brutal to be on the bottom, receiving end of it. Hopefully, you can practice these details, add them to your side control, and right away start reaping the benefits when you see your friends in class and you get to try the moves and controls out on. Okay, thanks a lot.